Welcome back. You're watching Your World at 10. Now, as the U.S. recovery slows, all the data seems to be pointing to that, the Fed Reserve is widely expected to announce measures to further ease its monetary policy in order to be able to jumpstart growth. However, noted investor Marc Faber says such a move would be catastrophic, adding that the Fed has completely misjudged the strength of the U.S. economy. Here's an excerpt of Faber's conversation on CNBC's Worldwide Exchange. Listen in.
Very frank, we've got this report here that the Fed might consider rolling over their purchases. How are investors to read that?
Well, investors should have listened to me already 6 months ago when I wrote that the Fed would continue to monetize, and this is my view. They will never let up. They will print and print and print until the final crisis wipes out the entire system.
Is that because they're more concerned about deflation than anything else?
They are very bad forecasters of economic events. In particular, that was the case for Mr. Greenspan, but Mr. Bernanke is in the same boat. He has no clue what the economy is doing. And so they misread in 2007 the severity of the forthcoming crisis. And then they misread in the last few months the strength of the economy, which is, unlike your commentator before just said, shows no sign of strengthening, but signs of weakening everywhere in the world. And therefore, I would argue that the Federal Reserve, with its policy and with the writings and papers Mr. Bernanke has published about the Great Depression, that more quantitative easing will be forthcoming. And significantly more. Let's say they push money into the system. That is true. It may not go into stimulating capital investments. It may not go into consumption, but it will go somewhere. Now, this somewhere in the last few years has been mainly emerging economies that have accumulated huge foreign exchange reserves as a result of the U.S. trade and current account deficit that led to the surpluses in these emerging economies. So there is an outlet for excessive money creation. It can be in agricultural commodities, or it can be in emerging economies, or one day it could be in wages in the United States. I don't think it will happen. But we have inflationary pressures in emerging economies, and eventually I suppose that this labor arbitrage in the world and the imbalances, overconsumption in the US and capital spending and essentially savings in emerging economies, that this will lead to a readjustment of currencies and also to a readjustment of costs. In other words, that labor costs in emerging economies will go up substantially, whereas in the Western world they'll be flat to down. In other words, that real wages in the Western world will decline. But in this environment, as I said, you can't be overly dogmatic. There will be a lot of bouts of inflation, sudden explosions in prices like last year. Everybody in the world has some concerns about the ultimate value of the US dollar and also obviously about the value of US government bonds, because if the fiscal deficits stay at this level, and in my opinion they are likely to actually increase over time, then obviously you will have a credit problem in the United States sooner or later. It's not going to happen in the next 3 years, but thereafter. So I think that the diversification out of US dollar treasuries is desirable. And that's why I'm not all that negative about equities. I think that if you look at the different investment alternatives, equities, bonds, real estate, commodities and precious metals, I think that equities have should be represented in a portfolio, even in particular, if you're very bearish about the world long term, you probably be better off in equities than in bonds.
Just looking at whether